Pokemon Champions is finally here, folks, and there is a lot of discourse about this game. Much of it negative. Bugs in the game, mechanics seemingly not working as intended in various cases, frame rate issues, performance issues, and perhaps a general distaste for the lack of content. I myself streamed the game for 7 hours on release, and I was playing as a completely free-to-play gamer. Not transferring anything from Pokemon home, not spending any money on the in-game transactions, getting everything, all Pokemon and items, purely through the free systems in place. And I have many thoughts on this. I would like to walk you through my first day playing the game, my attempts to throw together a functional team with whatever they threw at me randomly, my impressions on all of the different systems in the game, and just my general thoughts on Pokemon Champions and its future. Is the negative reception a bit of an overreaction? Is there some merit to this game, or is it a complete disaster? Let's find out hands-on. Let's experience it for ourselves. So the first thing I did as a free-to-play gamer was do these tutorials which give you a bunch of free currency. That was the first step, and these are at least pretty quick. I just spammed the A button and mashed through all of the text as fast as possible to get the currency as quickly as I could. And then it was time to look at the Pokemon lineups, which if you're not aware is the way you get Pokemon free in Champions. You go to the recruiting section, and every 22 hours they give you a free lineup of Pokemon, and you can recruit one of the Pokemon they give you. Just one of them. So it is completely up to random chance which Pokemon you actually end up with on your team, unless you are transferring from another Pokemon game. Which, of course, takes things out of your control, doesn't it? If you had a VGC team in mind that you were preparing, well, you'd better hope that you actually just randomly get the Pokemon on the team, otherwise you're out of luck. So what did we get in our initial pulls? And how did we build a team from what we got? Well, this was my very first lineup, and I was lucky enough to get a pretty good Pokemon here, Tyranitar. Tyranitar is a good Pokemon, of course, a great pseudo-legendary. It's been viable in VGC many times over thanks to its ability Sandstream, and its great bulk, high damage output, the Stab Rock Slide. Pretty solid one to get right off the bat. I did have some other choices I could have taken here though, and I didn't realize at the time that you could only pick one of them. I could have gone with Charizard, because Mega Charizard Y is currently one of the most popular Megas in the game. But I went with the Tyranitar. I thought it was a solid choice. Even if I don't get any Sand synergy, Tyranitar will be good against enemy weather, resetting their weather and replacing it with sand, and, you know, just as a good bulky attacker. So that's what I went with. It's also one of my favorite Pokemon, so that certainly helped. So then I went to my box, and I found out that, whoa, they give you some free Pokemon to start with. The Pokemon they gave me here were Arcanine, Whimsicott, Drampa, Aggron, and Sylveon. And I think these are the same for everybody, since I've seen a lot of these on the ladder in battle. So I think everyone gets these same starter Pokemon. Kind of a weird assortment, but Whimsicott is actually an amazing one to get for free. Whimsicott's actually one of the best doubles support Pokemon. It has Prankster and Tailwind. Tailwind doubles the speed of your whole side of the field, including you and your ally, for 4 turns, which is very good. One of the central mechanics of doubles is this kind of speed control to try and get your guys to be faster than the enemy. Whimsicott, incredible. Also good with Encore and such. Arcanine is also usable. It's got Intimidate. It's got some pretty good attacks, extreme speed and such. Sylveon is also pretty usable. It has the Pixelate Hyper Voice combo for a nice Fairy-type Hyper Voice that hits both opponents, and a Mono Fairy typing good stats. So these are some decent starter Pokemon. Drampa and Aggron, kind of garbage. Not really that good. Maybe Aggron's alright. I don't think Drampa is much of an asset, and Mega Drampa doesn't seem that fantastic either. But not the worst starter Pokemon in the world to give you, I guess. So I appreciated having the Whimsicott. And then the game made me play a ranked singles battle with this preset team plus Tyranitar. The only singles format in this game is 3v3, like the Battle Spot singles format of cartridge. So you have 6 Pokemon, but you only bring 3 of them to the battle. Many are disappointed by this. I did not expect them to have a ranked ladder for 6v6, because they've never done that, and they don't officially support 6v6. But a lot of people are upset that even in private lobbies, you cannot play with custom rules. You can only play 3v3 singles and VGC standard doubles. You can't mix and match the rules at all like you can in cartridge games. Or, you know, the stadium type games they used to have where you could select different clauses, play with different rule sets. None of that seems to be in the game. You have to play with only the official formats, even in a private battle, which I think is quite disappointing. I mean, there's no reason not to have more options to play the game in a private battle. I understand not having it as an official ranked ladder, but why not have more options for private battles? What's up with that? Anyway, this singles battle that they made me play, I believe was against a bot, because I won in 2 seconds with a Dragon Dance Tyranitar sweep. And then I went ahead and did some more lineups to get more Pokemon using my resources that I've accrued from the tutorial. In this second lineup, they gave me such heavy hitters as Morpeko and Furfrou. At the very least, they gave me a Gyarados, which is what I ended up taking. A decent Pokemon with Intimidate, good typing, good stats. So I went with that. And in my next lineup, I had a decision to make. They gave me 2 good options here. Aegislash was one of them, and Gengar was the other one. Aegislash, a very strong Pokemon with a great typing, great ability with King Shield to change stances. Very nice defensive, bulky attacker type fella. But Gengar is one of the strongest Mega evolutions. Mega Gengar is a Mega that I could start building around, and I thought Megas were going to be a big thing here. Every team needs a good Mega. So I went with the Gengar, just to have a strong Mega to then build around from there. I'm not so sure Mega Gengar even really works on a Sand team, or if anyone's ever used that before, but this is what they've given me, so I was going to try to make it work. It was then that I realized that I had a free Dragonite to claim in my mailbox, so I went and did that. Dragonite, a good Pokemon that I could certainly use on my starting team. A solid pseudo-legendary with various different options I could take advantage of. And here I figured I had a good enough team to start with. This was the initial squad: Tyranitar, Arcanine, Whimsicott, Gyarados, Dragonite, and Mega Gengar. Now the next step was putting movesets, abilities, items, natures, etc. on all of these Pokemon. And this is when I discovered that a bunch of items were not present in the game. Because I wanted to give my Tyranitar an Assault Vest, but I discovered in the shop there's no Assault Vest. A bunch of items are missing. There's no Choice Band, Choice Specs, Life Orb, there's no Rocky Helmet. A bunch of staple items are just not here. I suppose it's fine. I mean, the meta will just adapt to whatever is present. And it seems like this was an intentional choice to keep things simple in the initial meta. And some people say it's to reduce complexity for new players because there'd be an overwhelming amount of items. I don't know. I guess I'll talk about it later, but I don't really think the new player experience is that amazing in this game to begin with. It is quite a confusing game in terms of its UI and the advice it gives to a completely new player, but we'll get to that. And then I ran into another issue where I was trying to put my items on my Pokemon and I was battling with the damn UI. Because look at this UI for the items. You go to your item menu and it defaults to this tab that says Recent. And I had just purchased a bunch of items for my guys and they weren't showing up. It's showing me recent items. And I had no idea that there were these tabs that you could go through for the items that all have different categories. But they don't show them. They're like hidden. This UI is very confusing. Because it looks initially like there's only 2 tabs. There's no visual indication that there are other tabs to the right. So you have to go to these hidden tabs, press R, and then go to your Megastone section to get to the Megastones and the berries, etc. I think that this UI is terrible, and I was stun-locked by this for a couple minutes because I thought it was very confusing. I think it should absolutely default to like all items, so you aren't confused and you think that your items are missing. So anyway, then I had to train my Pokemon, give them movesets and EV spreads and such. And I do like that you can just literally choose whatever moves you want and EV them freely. I think this is probably the best part of Pokemon Champions. You can just completely customize everything about these Pokemon. And it does cost you some currency. And I was spending VP on this, which is the general currency that you can spend on anything in the game. But I didn't realize that you can also spend training tickets on this instead. And it's very weird because it doesn't prompt you to do that by default. In every other part of the game where you're spending resources, it first prompts you to use the dedicated ticket resource for that thing. Like for re-rolling the lineup, it prompts you to use the ticket that is specifically for that. And it also prompts you to ask if you would like to use a ticket to recruit a Pokemon with a recruiting ticket rather than spending your VP. But for some reason, when you do training, it prompts you to use your VP by default, and you have to press X to then go to a different menu and decide to use a ticket. So I actually wasted a bunch of VP through this whole stream because it was very unclear how to actually use my tickets. And it was very weird that it didn't prompt me for this specific part of the game by default to use the resource for that. So if you're doing this, folks, please use your training tickets instead of wasting a bunch of your VP while choosing moves, EVs, etc. for your Pokemon. Because I made a big mistake here and lost a lot of my precious VP on that. So now after an hour and 4 minutes on my stream, I was finally going into a ranked battle with my completed doubles team. That's a pretty hefty amount of time, I suppose, to get a team ready. But that's how long it took. And I thought that maybe for the scripted singles battle that they forced you to play, it would make sense that you're up against a bot in that one. And that when you go on the real ranked ladder, you will not face any bots. It makes sense the first ranked battle they make you play is a scripted one. But then I queued up what I thought was my first official ranked battle in doubles. And I think I was up against another bot. Because this player just kind of didn't do anything. They made completely nonsense moves and let me kill them with ease. And their team seemed very random as well. This could have been a completely new player. I don't know. But I've played so many games like this that I started to believe maybe they're giving me bots for the initial ranked battles. Because there was a pattern of very random looking teams and decisions that didn't seem to make any sense, where they're kind of just throwing their Pokemon away and letting you win. Personally, I found it incredibly lame that I was seemingly facing against bots so often. I don't know about you, but I would like to, in the ranked multiplayer game, I would like to play against real players. And I think that there's no shortage of real players. It's a hype release. It's not like they need bots to pad out a low player base or something. They're probably putting in the bots to make people feel better about themselves for the initial ranked battles, and at least get a few free wins in the books, but I was not a fan of facing the bots. It just feels lame to face a computer in what is supposed to be a multiplayer ranked video game. I'm not fond of it at all. It's a rising trend in general for games. They're throwing bots in every multiplayer game now, and I'm not a fan of it at all. My first real opponent was a fella called Oreo, who seemed to have a bunch of shinies and a Pelipper Rain team. This fella definitely transferred a bunch of stuff from Pokemon Home. Or they got insanely lucky on the pulls with multiple shinies. I think they transferred from Home. And this battle went very well. I led off with Whimsicott and Mega Gengar, tailwinded up. Mega Gengar got a couple of KOs, and then Tyranitar reset the Rain so that our Charlodon was useless. And it was an easy victory for Jim, as expected, with the random thrown together team. Luckily for me, my opponent was running Heliolisk for some reason, who I don't think is very good at all and didn't achieve anything. My experience in Ranked initially was a lot of bots using very random teams and throwing on purpose, and then a lot of people with all shinies that clearly just transferred from Home. And yet I was victorious against both kinds of players. I was winning with this team. And after an impressive 6-win streak against some bots and some little Timmies, I was feeling really full of myself. And then I matched against this player. And I said, oh no, this is a real player. Look at this team. Pelipper Rain with a Basculegion for Swift Swim. Sinistcha is a great support Pokemon. Whimsicott is a great support Pokemon. Mega Gardevoir and Sneasler, who is one of the top Pokemon in the format right now. Sneasler is incredible. Plus it's shiny Gardevoir. This player clearly has a genuine team. Oh dear. But then I saw what they led with and I realized I had already won. Because they led with Sinistcha and Basculegion. I know they were trying to pull a trick on me. Basculegion gets double speed in the Rain. And so what this fellow was trying to do was switch Sinistcha into Pelipper, activate the double Rain, and then go in with the Basculegion to try to kill my Mega Gengar. So I enacted the counterplay. They switched in their Pelipper as expected, doubling the speed of their Basculegion, but my Whimsicott used Prankster Tailwind to double my speed, matching their speed. My Mega Gengar is therefore now faster, and we just one-shot the Basculegion. And this prompted an instant forfeit. But then my thrown-together team was starting to have some issues. I faced this fella with a Charizard Y Sun team, Incineroar, a shiny Incineroar, and I got defeated by that. To my credit, it was a close one, but I couldn't quite stop this Incineroar from repeatedly achieving value with Intimidate and Fake Out and such, as is tradition in competitive doubles. And after losing to a few more meta teams like this, I realized that my team was starting to fall behind. I was doing alright against Little Timmy, but now I needed to step it up. So it was back to the recruitment farm to get some more fellas for me. It was time to upgrade the squad. Because I was having trouble against Garchomp, I decided to take Earthworm. I mean, it's a steel type, it's ground immune. Might also help me against fairy types. Not the greatest Pokemon in the world, but it felt like maybe it could help me in a matchup I was struggling with at that point. So I went with it. And I also took Kangaskhan, because Mega Kangaskhan is good and has been good in doubles historically. They did nerf Mega Kangaskhan in this game. It no longer gets Power Up Punch for a double attack boost. But I figured with Scrappy as its initial ability to dodge Intimidates from Incineroar, and Fake Out, plus just a great damage output, good bulk and speed and such, that Kangaskhan would be solid. I thought it would be solid. And so I chose it as an alternative Mega to Gengar to possibly use in the future. In the absolute funniest battle I've had so far in Pokemon Champions, the Worm choice ended up being incredibly auspicious, as I led with the Worm against a team featuring Tyranitar, Kingambit, and Garchomp, all of whom get destroyed by Earthworm. Body Press, one-hit KOs, Kingambit and Tyranitar, and Garchomp cannot touch Earthworm because it is immune to ground. And so this Worm absolutely soloed this matchup. And I was very vindicated for picking the Worm in that fleeting moment. Unfortunately, though, for the remainder of the stream, the Worm would be complete deadweight and never achieve anything again. That was the height of his career. He would never quite breach those heights ever again. But thank you, Worm, for the points in that particular battle. Thank you for the points. I played with this version of the team for about another hour, and to be honest, it did me pretty well. I had my first loss to Perish Trap. That was devastating. And I will try to be more careful against that next time. That was an embarrassing defeat. But considering that my team was thrown together, and I was no longer facing as many bots, I was pretty happy with how I was doing. The Whimsicott Mega Gengar combo was really carrying, I will say. But eventually I did decide to go and get some more Pokemon to perhaps revamp the team. The team did start to feel a bit weak after a while, and the Worm wasn't really pulling his weight. And in my first lineup, after that session, I found an Excadrill, and I was ecstatic about that, because Excadrill, of course, is the guy I wanted to synergize with Tyranitar. This is a classic combo. Excadrill has Sand Rush for double speed in the sand, and it is a great Pokemon, an incredible physical attacker that synergizes so perfectly with Tyranitar. I now had a direction. I was making a sand team. My Tyranitar was not just there randomly anymore, although he was doing very good work. Now he was the central force of the team. And Tyranitar Excadrill was the big combo. So this changed everything. I also ended up getting a Garchomp, which was another fantastic get. Great Pokemon, high tier Pokemon in many doubles formats historically. Just a great competitive Pokemon in general, and also one that I think fits on a sand team. So that was fantastic. So I replaced the Earthworm with Excadrill and the Dragonite with Garchomp. And then I sent this weird sand team with a random Mega Gengar on it that doesn't really fit. And this was doing all right for me. It wasn't too bad. The Excadrill was certainly carrying a little bit. But after a while, I felt like the Mega Gengar didn't really fit anymore, and my team was becoming something else. So what I did was I replaced Mega Gengar with Mega Kangaskhan, who I figured was a more powerful neutral Mega that would synergize better with what I had going on. Not exactly something you necessarily put on a sand team, but I figured it would do well and be pretty good. And then I replaced Whimsicott with Dragapult. And the Dragapult set I sort of just made up. I was running a special attack Dragapult with Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Draco Meteor, and Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt to hit enemy Pelipper and other water types. Draco Meteor just as a big thing, and Will-O-Wisp is just powerful in general. Hex hits status enemies for more damage. The Mega Kangaskhan was immediately great. Mega Kangaskhan helped so much against Incineroar. It was so nice to have a fake out user for some crowd control. Scrappy makes you immune to Intimidate. You can sometimes even stay as base Kangaskhan temporarily to fake out a ghost type because of Scrappy, because fake out can hit ghost types with Scrappy. So that's useful sometimes. And Kangaskhan's damage output was really good. The priority of Sucker Punch was really useful. Double Edge hit like a truck. Kangaskhan was fantastic. Dragapult, though, was a bit awkward. It was sort of good. I was like replacing Gengar with it. And I figured I didn't need Tailwind support anymore from Whimsicott since I had the Sand Rush thing going on for speed control of a different sort. But the Dragapult felt awkward. I was always in situations where I had Draco Meteored and then I didn't have enough special attack to do anything. I think physical Dragapult sets are more popular in VGC because clear body blocks Intimidate and speed drops as well. And Phantom Force also goes through Protect. Dragon Darts is a solid move, and you can get by with Will-O-Wisp as well as a random utility move. Plus U-Turn is good, and that's a physical attack, so I think that Dragapult tends to be better with a physical set in doubles, and I was running this weird special set, because I had no special attacker, so I just used a decent one that I had in my box that sort of replaced Gengar, but it wasn't the same. It was not nearly as good as the Mega Gengar. I still did pretty well with this iteration of the team, though, even though the Dragapult was a bit of a weak link, and also the Gyarados was starting to feel kind of awkward. Gyarados was helping a lot with Intimidate and its typing and Thunder Wave support, but also it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, and it's slow and sort of exploitable. And it's kind of a budget version of Incineroar, because I didn't have Incineroar, I just needed an Intimidate guy of some sort and a Ground Immune, something to help in those bad matchups, but I was looking to replace Gyarados with something. So that was the team I ended up with by the end of the stream, which was almost 7 hours of straight gameplay. And it was decent, but I was playing a bit off stream too, and I also played on my second channel and recorded a video there. After a couple more Pokemon pulls and revamping the team a little bit, this is what I have settled on, which I actually think is not too bad. I ended up replacing the Gyarados and the Dragapult with a Primarina and a Sinistcha, which I was actually pretty lucky to get from some pulls, because these are good Pokemon right now. Sinistcha in particular, I was very happy to get. This is actually one of the top support Pokemon in the game right now. It's kind of the new Amoonguss, because Amoonguss is not in Pokemon Champions at the moment. Sinistcha is filling the space Amoonguss used to fill. It has a great ability, Hospitality, which heals your ally as soon as you switch in, and that's just really tremendous for mid-battle healing. It also has Rage Powder, which redirects attacks to it, so you can shield your ally and take the hits on the Sinistcha. Also very good. Matcha Gotcha is a fantastic spread move that hits both opponents, drains health from both opponents, and has a burn chance on both opponents. Because it's a Grass Ghost type, the typing is really good. It's immune to being faked out, so it is not worried about getting flinched and disabled like that. And Grass typing means it's immune to Powder moves, so an enemy's Rage Powder won't affect it, and it can't be hit by Sleep Powder, which is huge. So Sinistcha was amazing. It also gets Trick Room, which might be situationally good, depending on the scenario, to invert the speed and perhaps win, maybe with my slower guys like Tyranitar and Primarina. Speaking of Primarina, I realized this is a really good Pokemon in the current meta. It's great into Incineroar, because it's a Water Fairy type. The typing is resistant to both Fire and Dark, and its ability Liquid Voice turns Hyper Voice into a Water type attack, and that's really good. Hyper Voice now becomes a spread move that hits both opponents, goes through substitutes, and is Water typing. So that's fantastic. It's just got really good stats too. It has a high special attack and decent natural bulk. It also feels really nice against Garchomp, who is kind of everywhere. The move pool is good. You've got Moonblast, which is just a hard-hitting fairy special attack, and Icy Wind is what I'm using. Some players use Haze. I think they've used Haze in other formats, but I don't think Haze is as useful in this meta. I went with Icy Wind because it's a spread move that lowers the opposing Pokemon's speed. And that can be another form of speed control to lower their speed and allow my guys like Kangaskhan and Tyranitar to maybe outrun things they otherwise wouldn't. I also went ahead and replaced the Garchomp with a Corviknight. I actually found the Garchomp a bit awkward to use. It felt similar to Excadrill in what it was doing, and yes, Garchomp's very good. I've faced it a lot, but I'm deciding to try out Corviknight here because now the team needs another flying type to synergize with Excadrill and allow it to Earthquake, because Earthquake hits your ally, so it's nice to have a flying type. Corviknight is also an alternate Tailwind user, and Tailwind is really nice to have. I was missing Whimsicott a bit with the Tailwind. Tailwind can be good in some scenarios to at least match their Tailwind or to make your guys faster in different situations. Corviknight is also just really good defensively. It kind of just sit and roost up and 1v1 stuff through its sheer bulk. It has a Steel Flying typing. It's immune to the Sandstorm, which is really good. And it has Brave Bird with Stab on it, which hits Sneasler. And Sneasler is a real problem Pokemon in this format, so I'm liking the coverage it hits Sneasler. You also can stomach whatever Sneasler can do, and you're immune to Dire Claw, so you can't get destroyed by Sneasler. And Corviknight gets Taunt, and Taunt, I think I was lacking previously. Taunt is really good to deny Trick Room, to deny sleep moves, to deny all sorts of things. Taunt is incredibly useful to have, and pretty important actually. So now I'm ticking more boxes with this version of the team. I actually think this team is pretty solid. I will keep iterating on it. I'm liking the sand team direction. It seems like the meta right now is a lot of sun and rain. I've noticed a lot of sun and rain. And actually snow as well, because Ninetales Alola is really good, and so is Mega Frostlass. So what's my impression of the free-to-play experience? I think I had pretty good luck. I mean, I was really desperately trying to get Incineroar or Sneasler because they're so good, and they're so necessary, but getting Tar Excadrill combo was good. I got decent Mega options, Gengar and Kangaskhan, that were solid, and getting Sinistcha was lucky as well. Because Sinistcha seems pretty necessary in the current meta, if you're not running like Incineroar or Sneasler. A lot of teams are running Sinistcha right now. It's really just the luck of the draw, though. The odds of you just getting the specific team you want is very low. If you don't have access to Pokemon from home to transfer in, you're gonna kind of just have to freestyle it like I did here. And luckily, they gave me stuff that steered me in a certain direction, but I could see someone just getting totally screwed. They keep giving you Simisear and Hippo, and you got nothing. I've had a few completely dead lineups that are just garbage. Why did they put Patrat in the game? No, not Watchog. Why did they put Watchog in here to just make my pulls worse? Can you get rid of Watchog? I don't want to see him anymore. Simisear keeps showing up. They've got heightened odds for Simisear, I swear to you. Hopefully, I get Incineroar eventually, because I feel like it's so necessary and I need it desperately. I don't know what Mega I should run on a Sand team. Kangaskhan's doing fine for now, but maybe there's a better one. Yeah, I managed all right, and the early ladder on day one was full of new players that were kind of just using random crap. So if you just have like Whimsicott, a decent Mega, and a couple solid guys like I did, you can probably do all right initially. It's just when you start facing the Pokemon Home Andrews, who have their Incineroar shiny and Sneasler shiny from the box, then it starts to worry. I did beat some of those fellas, but I also lost a lot to those fellas. I think the absolute worst part of being free to play is the fact that you only have 30 box slots. Honestly, if you just had more box slots to not worry about inventory management, it would be so much better. Even though you're gambling to get the Pokemon, at least you can just collect a bunch of guys that are solid and eventually create a pool of all these good Pokemon that you can mix and match. But the fact that you're limited to 30 means you have to be economical about it. Throw away Pokemon that might be good, but you just don't have space for them. And it creates a bit of a disaster where I'm finding individual solid Pokemon and recruiting them because they seem good, but then I'm running into the issue of not having enough box slots. So it might get to the point where I literally have to pay for the starter pack for more box slots, which I guess is only $7, so it's alright, but micromanaging the box slots is very unfun and very lame. It didn't even occur to me that they would limit them when I first heard of Champions, but this is the worst part of free-to-play, is 30 box slots is so few. And Pokemon is a game about catching them all, for goodness sake, and this restricts like the new player experience massively because you are disincentivized from experimenting, getting interesting Pokemon and trying out like niche strategies, because really you just want to like probably look up a team on the internet that's good, or test on Showdown or something first, and then figure out what you need, figure out multiple different teams that are viable, and then like try to rush to get those, maybe with some budget Pokemon in the interim as replacements for what you really want, and not like actually just experiment and team build in the game itself because the currency systems and the lack of box space is so limiting. I think that's the bad part of the free-to-play experience, and it's actually not very good for new players. There's this feature called Auto Team Build that I think just randomly puts a bunch of Pokemon from your box into your team. And I think that new players are going to think that this is a real thing you should do, but you can't just randomly throw together a team. It's going to be garbage. I think that this is why I've played against so many new players that have just running complete nonsense, because they might think that this auto team build function is good and that they can just work with the team that automatically builds, but then you got like a Pikachu with agility and a Watchog with tackle or something. I don't even know. The default sets are horrible as well. All of the default sets stink, and there is a feature in the game where you can trial recruit a Pokemon for 0 VP and you get it for 7 days, which might seem generous, but you can't modify their set at all unless you permanently recruit them and pay for them. And the default sets are always terrible. So the trial recruit is useless. it's completely unusable because you got to put Protect on these Pokemon. You got to put their best moves. You got to EV them correctly. If you're running a trial Pokemon with the unmodified default set, you're just going to lose in a battle against any real opponent. So the trial recruitment thing is basically just a way to placeholder Pokemon you might buy later. That's all I would use that for. Because, like, maybe you get a decent Pokemon, but you're not sure if you're going to get the Pokemon that synergize with it. Then you trial recruit it, and you can pay to recruit that Pokemon permanently later if it ends up being something that fits on a team. That's the only way I would personally use the trial recruitment feature, and the only real value it actually provides. Overall, though, I did have a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun freestyling a team with what they gave me. I actually think I did pretty well for myself, considering. They do initially give you a bunch of resources, and you can re-roll the guys multiple times to at least probably get some viable guys. It might be a random mishmash of viable guys, but you can perhaps work with it. It is random chance, though. There's a chance that you just get absolutely nothing multiple times in a row, and that is horrendous. I do hate the fact that unless you have home, it is just a gamble with what you get. That is pretty unfortunate. I think that the UI of the game is really bad. I kind of hate it. But I am a Showdown player, and the Showdown UI just has all the info you could ever want, and it's very seamless. So I don't know if maybe I should temper my expectations playing an official Pokemon game, but at the same time, shouldn't the official game also show you all the information? I mean, first of all, the way that the teams are laid out in the box and stuff is very confusing. There's a lot of finicky stuff with adding items, and the item menu looks like crap, and they don't tell you can use the tickets for the training and prompt you for that. There's like menus within menus. There's something called a sub-menu, which has other options, and it just feels kind of clunky and messy. I don't love the UI. And the in-battle UI is also not amazing. And again, I am coming from Showdown, where they have quality of life features like if a Pokemon reveals a move, you hover over them with the mouse and you can see the move. There's a battle log to see your turn history. The timer's right there. It tells you as the time ticks down. It shows you when effects like Tailwind and Trick Room are up on the screen directly with a turn counter to see how long it takes. But in Champions, there's no battle log. The way that you see what Pokemon your opponent has is by going to the Switch menu, and then when you press Switch, you can see your Pokemon options to switch to, and then their Pokemon as well that they've revealed, or that they could have. I don't know how they couldn't just fit it on the UI somewhere to just show all the information that's relevant to you cleanly. I mean, look at a game like Slay the Spire. All the info you have is on the screen. Your health, the enemy's effects, everything that each status ailment does, your relics and what they all do. Now, I know it's not fair to expect a multi-billion-dollar franchise to put the same effort into UI design as two passionate indie game developers that made Slay the Spire. Of course, the passionate indie game developers are going to do a far better job. That's no surprise, is it? And it's no surprise why Showdown has far better UI. It's made by passionate Pokemon fans actually care about these quality of life features. To see effects like Tailwind, Trick Room, and Weather, you have to press X and go to a separate menu, and then it tells you just a straight up dialogue box with like Tailwind, 2 out of 5 turns remaining or whatever. You could really just display this information on the screen. But much of the screen is taken up by the impressive 3D graphics of Pokemon Champions in the stadium. Oh, the stadium with lights on the floor and Sneasler doing a stupid animation and Incineroar doing this with his hand. That's far more important than, you know, the game mechanics that are in play in the battle state. Oh yeah. Now I know that the cartridge games have been like this for decades, and they don't really show all this information because it's a single player RPG and they don't want to inundate you with all these mechanics on the screen. But this is Pokemon Champions. This is the competitive focused game. So I thought maybe they should step up with the UI design and communicate everything relevant to you on the actual screen that you're playing, rather than having them in weird separate menus that are a little bit unintuitive and a bit inelegant. And you might counterpoint me and say, well, Jim, that would be a bit overwhelming for new players, because that's a lot of information on screen. If you approach it well enough and you test it enough and you do proper UI design, no, it wouldn't be that complicated to say, oh, rain is up, 3 turns are left. This is basic information. A new player should actually have that on screen. That would teach them mechanics more easily than how it is now, where keeping track of rain turns is actually a little bit unintuitive, where it could be more intuitive with proper UI design. All that being said though, I think that this is still a step up from playing VGC on a cartridge game. Because you don't have to EV train anymore, you don't have to breed Pokemon anymore, there's no IVs in the game, which is a whole ordeal to get perfect IVs. There's no egg moves. That's when you have to breed Pokemon in a certain way to achieve a move from the parent, rather than them being able to learn it instantly. The training is cool. You can just literally get their whole moveset, choose what you want, choose their nature, choose their stats. I think that that's a big step up from how it was in VGC, where just getting a competitive ready team was a Herculean task, and something that you had to look up on 10 different wikis to actually do. I think a lot of people believe that since I focus on Smogon singles that I hate doubles. But that's not really true. I think doubles is fun, and it's unique in its own way. It's got unique mechanics in it, unique ways to play. I just hate playing VGC on cartridge. I think it stinks. Part of that is because the UI is bad, as I said, and Showdown is much better in that department. But Showdown is also just a better user experience where the focus is on battling and not weird grinding where you have to hatch a million eggs and do all this random crap to get a competitive team. And Pokemon has always been at odds with the two ways to play it, the competitive battling and the single-player RPG. So now that they have a competitive-focused game, I think that's overall probably going to be a better experience if you want to go to a tournament. On my first day of playing Champions, I have a team that is fairly usable. This is just not something that would happen on the cartridge. It is a step up in the experience, specifically of playing VGC competitive. Now, there are a lot of issues with Champions. They could have done far better. There's so many qualms I have with it, but at least I can play the game in a decent amount of time. Maybe I have to do a little bit of finagling to get the exact mon I want. I gotta like buy Pokemon Scarlet, get an Incineroar, send it over through home. But even that is a better experience than what it was before playing VGC, where you had to train the Pokemon up, use bottle caps, use all the crap. Now, sometimes when I say stuff like this, people malign me, and they say, Jimothy, do you even like Pokemon in the first place? If you don't want to play the single-player game and train your Pokemon to bring to the championship like in the anime series. Jimothy, do you hate Pokemon? Are you even a real Pokemon fan? And I'm just going to make this very clear right now. I am as much of a Pokemon fan as I am. I'm not in the Pokemon fan competition where the more merchandise you have and the more games you've played through, the better you are on the leaderboards. I'm just me. I like competitive battling. I really love Showdown. I like playing old gen metas. I like interesting formats, team building. I like the mechanics of Pokemon in the context of battling other players. That's what I like. I like some of the creature designs too. I like Muck. I enjoy Furret and Dodrio and Macago and people like this. I don't really like this. I think that the single-player RPGs are actually not great RPGs. I think that there are better RPGs out there, especially the modern ones. There's bad storylines, a bunch of busy work. I think that they're unpolished. They're not very good. That's just my opinion. I love the Pokemon battle mechanics. I think it's a very unique competitive game where it's like a multiplayer RPG. There's nothing really like it in the world. And I love Showdown. That's me. Why am I invalid as a Pokemon fan if I like some parts of the game and not the other parts? And the fact that it's been so obtuse to play the parts that I like in the past has been a barrier for me. Because I don't want to play through Legend ZA to get Mega Chestnut or whatever, to transfer it to Pokemon Home. I think you need to do that to get Mega Floette right now. You can only get it from Legend ZA. What if I hate Legend ZA but I love to play VGC doubles? What's wrong with me? Why can't I be that? And the Pokemon is a diverse community with many different fans. They like different things. I probably also have to address the fact that people are very upset at the limited Pokedex and the item limitations. This I'm actually not as concerned about. I mean, my favorite meta is Gen 3 OU. That is a limited dex. There's not that many Pokemon in the game. But there's enough for a competitive meta. There's enough for a balanced competitive meta in there. And that's the point, actually. Sometimes having less is more. A lot of people seem to have been hoping that Champions was a full-on Pokemon battle simulator with absolutely everything that has ever existed available to play. But it's actually what it is a more convenient alternative to the previous competitive VGC official experience. That's what it is. It's not a full-on simulator. And if you want a full-on simulator, Pokemon Showdown exists. Just simply play Pokemon Showdown. If you are surprised that Pokemon Champions is worse than Showdown, I don't think you live in the real world. Showdown is better than 99% of games that have ever existed. There's no way they could make anything better than Showdown if they tried. It's not possible for them. I can get down with the other critiques of Champions. The bugs are unforgivable. Someone clicked Haze and they fully healed for some reason. King Gambit is not immune to psychic typing sometimes. Things don't make any sense. Mega evolution happens in random order, it seems, not by speed. Nobody knows how mechanics work in this game. It seems poorly implemented. There are bugs with, like, queuing for a battle. People are getting soft lock in the menus. These are unforgivable things. The UI design is horrible. The recruiting system is not ideal. But I don't really care about the limited decks. I mean, I'm not even someone who has collected all the Pokemon throughout the games. People are upset they can't transfer their Swampert that they used as a child into Champions. They have an attachment to their Pokemon that I don't really have. I just, whatever's in the game is the meta. That's how I look at it. I don't really care about transferring all my guys over. But for a lot of people, that's a big part of it. So I guess I understand, because that's the appeal of the game for them. And the appeal of Pokemon is collecting all the guys. That is their catchphrase, to catch them all. So I suppose that's where the frustration comes from, because they no longer allow them all in the game. But for me, let me just boil down my thoughts in a very simple take here. Showdown is by far the best way to play competitive Pokemon, but it is unofficial, so official tournaments are not going to use Showdown. If they did, they'd be better, but there's no world where they would use an unofficial browser game at an official Pokemon tournament. It just would never happen. So the only way you can play in official tournaments is on the cartridge in the past, which was a crap experience. Pokemon Champions is kind of garbage in many ways, but it is better than the previous experience of playing in-person tournaments. If you're a new player, and this is your gateway into competitive Pokemon, I think that if you start just with Champions, you actually probably will have a pretty bad time. You kind of need a lot of fundamental knowledge to know what you're doing, especially as a free-to-play player. And as a new player, presumably you don't own a bunch of the games to transfer Pokemon from, so there's going to be a big barrier. You're going to use random crap. You're probably going to lose a lot. You're probably going to mismanage your currencies and have a terrible time. Unless maybe you pay money, but even then, there's nothing in the game that's really teaching you competitive Pokemon very well. The tutorials are alright. They teach you basic mechanics like physical versus special, priority moves, etc. But deeper metagame knowledge is not really going to happen purely on Champions alone. I would actually suggest that you play Showdown to learn how Pokemon works, and maybe look up some guides, use some pre-built teams on Showdown, get a feel for how Pokemon works in the first place, then play Champions and try to assemble your team with more knowledge that you've accrued from the better experience of Showdown. In fact, the only real reason you would play Champions over Showdown is 1, because it's official and it's what they play in the tournaments, and 2, because that's where the VGC players are probably going to play more rather than Showdown. Other than that, you could actually just play only on Showdown if you just care about having fun and playing Pokemon, to be honest with you, which is what I've been doing for years. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I do plan to play more Champions on the second channel and on live streams. I'll probably make more content about it too. Metagame trends, analysis and such. At the end of the day, I do just want to play Pokemon, and after you jump through all the hoops that Pokemon Champions throws at you, you can just play Pokemon a little bit more cleanly than before, which I guess is something to appreciate. Even though we should expect more from a large franchise, and they are being a bit sloppy here, when I think we should expect and demand a bit more polish from them. But the game is what it is, it's fun for what it is, I'm enjoying it so far, and I will be playing more of it. What do you think, folks? How has your experience been with Champions so far? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.